If there's a mysterious organization in the Naruto story, it has to be the Root Anbu. It's one of those organizations we practically know nothing about, at least by reading the manga, and they are in this very complex relationship with the village and the characters themselves. They're kind of antagonists, but not really at the same time. They were a subdivision of the Anbu Black Ops of the Leaf Village, and they had some special training and also special missions. And of course, they were all led by Danzo, the most based character in the Naruto series. He also founded the Root Anbu in order to support the village and the Land of Fire from the shadows. The Roots carried out missions that Danzo believed would benefit the Leaf Village because of its core view, and that was the unseen ones who support the great tree of the Leaf Village from the depths of the earth, which is very much symbolized by, well, the headquarters of the Root Anbu, down underneath the underbellies of the Konoha village. It's very interesting to look at that location. It's kind of sad that there's nothing really interesting that ever happens there. It's just, a big tunnel underneath the village, and, well, the Root Anbu is just kind of there. Needless to say, the missions of the Root Anbu were, more often than not, less than respectable, such as eliminating individuals that were considered potential threats, simply for expressing their dislike of the Leaf Village, despite not having done anything really against them. The organization's top priority was its secrecy, and most of its missions were carried out in the dark, autonomous from Konoha's authority, meaning Tsunade herself, the 5th Hokage, or even Hiruzen back in the day, wouldn't know about the dealings of the Root Anbu, which gave Danzo and the Root itself a lot of power. You can imagine how one could use a platoon of very experienced and skilled ninjas if you don't really have much supervision. You can essentially do whatever you want. Danzo even plotted a coup, so there's that. The Root officially got disbanded after the Uchiha clan massacre due to Danzo spearheading the tragedy, but it remained active, as we all know, in the underground of the Leaf Village up until Danzo's death, and despite Hiruzen's orders to disband the group, the members remained loyal to Danzo, his orders being the highest priority over even the Hokages. Upon Danzo's death, Sai suggested that its members look to Kakashi for guidance, since Kakashi at the time was slated to become the Hokage. Tsunade was unconscious because of Pain's attack, but the problem for the Root Anbu members was that after Danzo's death, their actions came to light, and the members were mostly forced to scatter because they became pariahs. Still, after the 4th Great Ninja War, Kakashi and Tsunade prevented background checks of the villagers, partially hoping to prevent Root Anbu members to be further ostracized, which allow most of them to reintegrate themselves with the normal Anbu Black Ops. All this stuff is not in the manga, it's in light novels, but I think it's interesting lore and world building here. It makes sense that the actions of the Root Anbu members wouldn't be seen very well by the entire society, and they would be ostracized, and they would need help from the Hokages to essentially live normal lives. Sai also played a role helping the former Root Anbu members breaking away from Danzo's dark legacy. And in the Boruto era, the Root Anbu and its remnants don't even exist anymore. The Root was an extremely strict and secretive group, and as such, each member of the organization had a cursed seal imprinted on the back of their tongues by Danzo, which when activated will paralyze their entire body if they try to speak anything about Danzo or the organization, rendering them unable to speak or move. Sai noted that this was done in an effort to prevent information leaks. Then, should anyone be captured and interrogated by enemy forces, they wouldn't be able to give up anything, even if they wanted to. And we can see that the seal disappears after Danzo died. We see Sai showing his tongue and say, "Oh, it's no here anymore, wow." Danzo had also trained its members to lose their emotions by growing up as brothers from a very young age, only to later be made to kill each other. Nice! This was done to kill any sense of sentiment or emotional attachment. This method was very similar, if not, the same method as the Miss Village's former academy graduation test. Each member of the Root had a codename. Even the members themselves apparently did not know their original names. And unlike normal Anbu members, they carried a tipless tanto, which is a short sword instead of a katana. Also, unlike normal Anbu, members of the Root took orders only from Danzo instead of the Kage, which I've already mentioned, unless ordered otherwise, such as when Danzo told Sai to become a member of Team Kakashi/Yamato. In that particular situation, he would be taking orders for the Hokage because he's essentially in a team outside of the Root Anbu, and there are gonna be exceptions for when the characters would have to take orders from different people other than Danzo. Another speciality of the organization was slow, long-term brainwashing. One of the most despicable moments of brainwashing by the Root Anbu was when they used photographs of Kabuto to brainwash Nono Yakushi. You remember the woman from the orphanage that took care of Kabuto when he was a kid? They fed her pictures of Kabuto growing up, but then they slightly altered Kabuto's appearance over time, showing her, oh, this is Kabuto now, look at him, and then by the end of it, when Kabuto was already older in the pictures, he was a completely different person, and so they managed to make her go ahead and try to kill Kabuto, just by slowly switching the pictures and feeding information to her that was false, but over time she believed it. Didn't work, Kabuto wasn't killed by her, but still, you can see how their methods are effective, and we can see how they would use this type of thing against their enemies, but also with their own members to indoctrinate them into the force of the Root Anbu and make them completely loyal towards Danzo. So much so that even after the organization was disbanded, they were still completely loyal to him and they didn't really care about the Kage. Root Anbu members wore the standard cloak and mask of the Leaf Anbu, but they didn't have standard uniforms like the others. Underneath the cloak, each Root member wore a personal attire. The only single distinguishing garment they wore was a short black midriff jacket with red straps over their shoulders, along with a tipless tanto, as I mentioned, which is nice to differentiate them with the normal Anbu members. They also tend to wear dark cloaks. Even though Anbu members can also wear dark cloaks, they tend to favor whitish yellow cloaks. So of course the Root Anbu is gonna have this darker aesthetic because within the story itself, it symbolizes that they're up to darker things. The concept of the Root Anbu itself is very interesting. A Black Ops of the Black Ops. It's crazy to think about the types of things these guys would have done, especially under Danzo's orders, a guy that has no qualms about bending morality completely. It's the organization that protects everyone, the Leaf, the Land of Fire, from the shadows themselves. It really represents the philosophy of Danzo, where the true shinobi is the one who remains hidden, the one who remains in the shadows, protecting no matter what, sacrificing him or herself so that the country and the village will thrive. And this is why Danzo respected Itachi so much, because he essentially did that, killing his entire clan, and therefore he protected the village. It's interesting that the name of the organization, the Root, appears in Danzo's last words. Very poetic, and it really summarizes the character of Danzo himself and the entire concept of the Root Anbu. Danzo's last words are also impactful because Danzo himself sacrifices himself trying to bring Sasuke and Tobito with him to the grave, essentially, so that the future of the shinobi world can prosper. He says, for the sake of the shinobi world, for the sake of the Leaf Village, I will not allow you to live. And then when he has that remembrance with Hiruzen when he's about to die, it's almost like a fever dream at this point. The last phrase is, you are the leaves bathing in the sun, referring to Hiruzen and the people of the Leaf Village, and I am the roots that grow in the dark. The root, well, very symbolic of his organization and all that. And it's just interesting to see this philosophy that's completely opposite of the will of fire. But in the same time, it somehow complements it. Still, concepts are not everything. We have to look at the execution and how Kishimoto handled the Root Anbu throughout the story. And I have to say, just like the Anbu itself, the Root Anbu is very hit or miss, and mostly miss, to be honest. First of all, the organization was only introduced after the time skip, which is a bit weird. Now, you can argue that, well, they're so underground that you just never saw them in part 1, and they never really played any role in the story. But of course, this is not because they were underground, it's just because Kishimoto hadn't really thought about them at the time. Danzo should have made a move to the Hokage seat after Hiruzen died in the hands of Orochimaru. It makes almost no sense whatsoever why Danzo wouldn't at least try, because as soon as Tsunadi's unconscious in the pain arc, Danzo's like, yeah, I'm the new Hokage, let's get going, let's go. That arc would have been the perfect way to introduce Danzo into the story, or maybe even before that. I I don't know, it would have just been more interesting if the Root Anbu and Danzo himself were present from the beginning. But you can't do anything if Kishimoto didn't think about them at the time, and I prefer them being included than not. But still, think about it from an in-universe perspective. Danzo had the perfect chance there. Hiruzen had died. Danzo is the most experienced ninja they have at the moment. He's more experienced than the Sanin. Jiraiya literally refuses to become the new Hokage, and he says, okay, let's go grab Tsunade. And then Jiraiya is outside of the village for a month or so when he's searching for Tsunade. Tsunade is obviously not in the village either. Kakashi is unconscious. Guy is there, so I suppose there's Guy. But you see here, this is the perfect time for Danzo to execute his coup and take over the village. The strongest ninjas are away or unconscious, and the village had just been attacked by Orochimaru, meaning that they were weaker than they usually are. Now, of course, we learn later that Danzo was absolutely terrified of Itachi, and Itachi shows up just, after Hiruzen dies, because he's doing that to remind Danzo, yes, I am alive, don't mess with Sasuke, don't try anything stupid, Danzo, I'm still here. And yeah, this would probably make one shake in his boots, but even still, Danzo should have at least appeared in that part of the story. He doesn't have to become the Hokage there, of course not, but him showing up would have made sense. Missed opportunity, but okay, let's see how they do in Shippuden. The Root Anbu is introduced with Danzo and Sai when Sai is assigned as one of the members of Team 7 because Danzo tells Tsunade, I want Guy from my group here to go and oversee Naruto and what he's doing because he's a Jinchuriki. I don't trust you completely. I don't want the Leaf Village to lose the Nine Tails because you're stupid. I'm paraphrasing here, by the way. And so Sai becomes a member of Team Kakashi. He spies on Naruto, you could say. His mission on the Tenchi Bridge was actually to go and eliminate Sasuke, but he changes his mind because he's actually acquiring emotions. It's an okay arc, but Sai is a character that has development only during the Tenchi Bridge Arc, essentially during the entire series, and then he's just forgotten and relegated to a minor character. He does have a bit of development later on in the 5 Kage Summit arc when he stops Karui from beating Naruto up, but for a character that's the new Sasuke of Team 7, he doesn't do squat. Apart from Sai, the Root Anbu's presence is very minute up until the Pain arc. We just get a couple of scenes with Danzo being menacing, threatening Tsunade, talking to Sai about the mission. Sai asks for more time with Naruto because he's acquiring emotions and actually getting attached to his team, which is a fine arc. I'm not a fan of Sai, it's obvious, but still they could have done more with a character. And then in the Pain arc, the Root Anbu decides to stay put because Danzo tells them, this is the perfect way for me to become the Hokage. The Leaf Village is going to be in shambles. Tsunade is probably going to die in this attack, so I'm just going to jump in and become the new Hokage. It's the perfect way. If you think about it from Danzo's perspective, this makes sense because his goal is to become the Hokage. Now that Itachi is dead, there's no one in his way to make things bad for him if he does so. And Danzo believes that the philosophy of the Will of Fire will destroy the Leaf Village and take them to ruin, so he needs to become the Hokage as soon as humanly possible. So not defending the village, hoping Tsunade dies or something else happens so that Danzo can become the Hokage here is the best alternative for him. The plan works very well. He doesn't really have any issues becoming the 6th Hokage. Even though Tsunade was alive, she was in no condition to be the Hokage. She was completely unconscious. And then he achieves his goal. His final goal, well, almost, because then they have the 5 Kage Summit. And Danzo's new goal is to become the great leader of the Shinobi Alliance. But you see, up until this point, we only see 2 main Root Anbu members, doing anything at all. Sai and Danzo. We never see the organization itself acting as a unit or squads or them doing anything useful. Unlike the Anbu, which we actually see fighting during the series against the Pain summons, against Obito from the Mist Village, but still, the Root members are just hanging around in the background, doing nothing really, which doesn't really make them feel very threatening or interesting. Danzo, however, is a very interesting character. Of course, he fails to become the great leader of the Alliance because Ao catches on to his Kodo Matsukami and Mifune is broken out of it, because Danzo was guiding Mifune towards concluding that Danzo would be the leader of the Alliance, and if not for the Ao, then Danzo would have probably still, be the leader here. Danzo runs away, fights Sasuke Sasuke and dies. Well, Danzo's fight against Sasuke is actually pretty good. Danzo, having used Itachi to kill the Uchiha clan that were trying to have a coup and take over the Leaf Village, which would destroy the village, makes a lot of sense. And then you can just see how twisted he is. He has no morals. He grabs the Sharingan from all those massacred Uchihas and plants them into his arm, an arm that's essentially made of Hashirama cells, made by Orochimaru. So you can see Danzo really doesn't care if he is getting power. If he is able to protect the Leaf Village by any means necessary, he will do so. And it's interesting that Danzo tells Sasuke, you are Itachi's greatest failure because he couldn't kill you, and now you are a big problem for the Leaf Village, a problem I'll have to solve right now. He even says that Itachi telling Sasuke about the truth of the Uchiha clan massacre, which is not what happened. It was Tobi, but Danzo doesn't know that. He assumes it was Itachi, and this makes Danzo furious. He says Itachi is a traitor of the Leaf Village for doing that. And then Sasuke crushes him with his Susanoo hands, just that Danzo used Izanagi and reappears behind him. But it's an amazing scene. Danzo talks about what a true shinobi is, working from the shadows, expecting nothing in return, just the sacrifice. This is how the Leaf Village will prosper. And he really lived by that philosophy. He didn't care about living in the underground, about doing the dirtiest work to protect the Land of Fire. The problem is that he was the only character who ever got anything to do in the Anbu. Even Sai didn't amount to anything, so the organization itself is not as compelling as the leader. The only time we see somebody other than Sai and Danzo fighting that are Root Anbu members, they were Fuu and Torune, and granted their exchange with Obito is not boring or bad, it's very fast, and they get bodied, which is expected, but you know, it's underwhelming to say the least. Of course, it was supposed to be a quick fight. I don't see these guys taking on Obito with Kamui, but we could have seen a bit more from the Root Anbu if the organization was to feel more imposing, threatening, and dark. We also see Fuu trying to take Ao's Byakugan with his clever Yamanaka jutsu, but it didn't work. And you can see by the members of the Root Anbu that we know of that Danzo really liked the bloodlines. He liked to have members from prestigious clans in the Leaf Village in his disposal. He had Aburames, he had Yamanakas in Fuu and Torune, and who knows what else. Which shows how much strength and political power Danzo held. But by far the biggest missed opportunity was in the 5 Kage Summit arc as well, because this is the arc where the Root Anbu crumbles, the arc where their leader dies, the arc Danzo's demise comes, and nothing comes of it. At least in the main story, you have to read some light novels to get the flashbacks and a bit of the backstory of the Root Anbus back then. But Sai, he's there, he cannot tell Naruto or Sakura anything about Danzo because of the seal, and then the seal just goes away and he says, oh, I guess Danzo's dead. Wow, the guy that brainwashed me my entire life and I kind of feel nothing about it. It would have been much more interesting if Sai himself and other Root Anbu members were involved in that arc. There could have been a more interesting emotional payoff, even though the Root Anbu wasn't that established in terms of characters, because we didn't even know the names of the characters in the Root Anbu. Sai's name is not Sai. It's implied that he doesn't even have a name. If you don't remember, it was Danzo that gave him that name. So yeah, we don't know exactly what these guys were all about. We just know they are supposed to be strong and that they would have very strange and quirky abilities. I mean, Sai controls ink and his art. Fuu has very interesting Yamanaka jutsus, and Torune has nano insects that are extremely powerful if you think about it. They're essentially a one-shot jutsu. Now, of course, there are many aspects and organizations in the Naruto series that could have been focused more, such as the Root Anbu, the Jinchurikis, the 7 Ninja Swordsmen, the Anbus from the other villages, and we cannot have it all, because if if that was the case, the manga would have been extremely long, and this is not how Kishimoto wrote, and not how Shonen Jump usually likes their manga. They want quick pace, they want things to happen, and if Kishimoto had stopped the story to make more stuff with the Root Anbu, giving them more named characters, more interesting backgrounds, it would have probably been a drag in the story. Though, you can do these things while keeping the pace good and the story interesting. I'm not saying it's impossible, it's just that when you write 20 pages of a manga per week, you don't really have that much more time for planning, and some things are just gonna fall on the wayside. Unfortunately, this is the case with the Root Anbu. They seem to be this useless organization that never really does anything, and that's because they kinda never do. The only missions we get to see Root Anbu members doing are first Sai watching over Naruto, which I suppose he did to the best of his abilities, but Sai, as I mentioned before, never got anything special for him in the story. He never really had a one-on-one big fight or anything resembling that. We then got Fuu and Torune, who failed to escort Danzo back to the Leaf Village. Fuu also failed to collect Ao's Byakugan, and then they just died very easily against Obito. And that's pretty much it. They don't do much more than that. I mean, at least the Anbu had a couple of things to do. They fought against pain, summons, and all that. They showed up here and there, even though most of the times they did was to die. You know, they were jobber characters, red shirts to be killed off, and hype up more powerful characters, which also wasn't the greatest thing to do with them. And then when the Root Anbu has the chance to do anything, such as in the pain arc, they stay put, which makes sense, but still doesn't paint them as very courageous and strong. And then in the 5 Kage Summit, they're disbanded, and they have almost no bearing in the story. It's just Danzo. Kinda disappointing. I wish they had more stuff to do. Now, of course, you can read some light novels where they expand upon this, and I figure there are so many interesting spin-off stories you could tell about, you know, very unknown Root Anbu members on various difficult missions around the world. You could build this espionage series with Root Anbu members spying on other villages, doing all kinds of crazy Black Ops stuff, but it would completely deviate from the main story if you were to do that back in the day when the manga or the anime was coming out. I suppose you could do that with filler episodes, and they kinda did that in the Kakashi flashback filler episodes when Yamato was a member of the Root Anbu, apparently. Danzo even trained him himself. And remember when Danzo ordered Hiruzen's assassination? Yamato/Tenzo back in the day attacked Hiruzen with his wood style and almost killed him. Yeah, that's not canon, because if that was the case, like, Danzo would never have recovered as a political figure in the Leaf Village. He tried to kill the Hokage in that filler episode. This is unacceptable. Well, I suppose Orochimaru did kill Hiruzen, and in the Boruto era, he's like a quote-unquote good guy now under surveillance, and he's not even arrested. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The Kakashi filler arc wasn't even good anyway, and they didn't do that much with the Root Anbu. We do get to see Danzo and glimpses of the Root in some flashbacks. For instance, when Kabuto is a kid in that orphanage and Danzo and Orochimaru show up there to collect kids and stuff to become their spies. And we also see Danzo manipulating Hanzo to destroy the resistance in the Rain Village so that the Leaf Village and the Land of Fire can acquire more political power there. Danzo and Hanzo, very similar names, huh? Danzo also tried to kill Nagato and everyone in the Proto-Akatsuki before it even started, which could have saved the world a lot of trouble, but he didn't succeed. Well, he didn't try to do it himself, he sent Root Anbu members, but they failed, and you can see them fighting against Nagato, Yahiko, and Konan in some filler episodes, which I suppose is interesting as well. But in the manga, the organization is very disappointing. The way they fizzle out and just leave the story without much mention is not the greatest thing Kishimoto has ever done with the organizations in the series. And even though this was a very cool concept contrasting the Will of Fire and Hiruzen's philosophy that came from the first and second Hokages, the execution was a bit lackluster, even though Danzo is a great character that did absolutely nothing wrong. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already, please, it takes only 2 seconds. Also like this video to help me out with the YouTube algorithm, this really helps me. And watch this other video right here for more entertaining Naruto content. Thank you so much for watching.